Tonight, you can walk across a quiet field in Belgium and hear nothing but the wind rustling through the grass and the distant lowing of cattle. There are no roaring cannons, no screaming horses, and no choking smoke, just open green fields and a tall stone lion looking out over nothing in particular. Yet on one single afternoon in June of 1815, this quiet patch of earth decided who would rule the European continent. It is a story most people know only as historical shorthand for overreaching ambition, Waterloo. But that shorthand strips away the agonizingly small details that actually determined the outcome. A matter of hours, a delayed message, and a few sudden bursts of heavy rain. By 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte was supposed to be a figure of the past. After his catastrophic defeat in Russia, he had been exiled to the island of Elba, but he escaped, landed on the French coast with barely 1,000 men, and began a legendary march to Paris. The very soldiers sent by the monarchy to arrest him instead defected to his side in waves. Upon his triumphant return, the great powers of Europe, Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, panicked. They declared Napoleon an outlaw and formed a massive coalition to crush him permanently. Napoleon knew he could not win a prolonged war against their combined numbers. His only hope lay in aggressive speed, divide the Allied forces and destroy them before they could unite. This strategy was classic Napoleon, striking the center of a divided enemy before they could concentrate. For a few days, his plan worked brilliantly. The prominent historian Andrew Roberts notes just how close the French emperor came to breaking the Allied lines. Napoleon struck the Prussian army, commanded by the stubborn 72-year-old Gebhard von Blucher, at the Battle of Ligny, forcing them into a messy retreat. Napoleon assumed the Prussians were knocked out of the campaign. However, Blucher miraculously regrouped his men and sent a vital promise to his British counterpart, the Duke of Wellington. If Wellington could hold his ground at Waterloo, the Prussian army would march to reinforce him. That single promise became the absolute hinge upon which the entire war turned. Wellington chose his defensive position masterfully along a low ridge, anchoring his flanks near fortified stone farmhouses like Hougoumont. His strategy was entirely built on patience. Absorb the initial shocks, hide the infantry from direct artillery fire behind the reverse slope, and stall the French momentum. Then the weather intervened. A massive overnight downpour turned the fields into thick, sucking mud. This was disastrous for Napoleon, whose battlefield dominance relied heavily on his devastating artillery. Cannonballs that would normally skip lethal paths through enemy ranks instead thudded harmlessly into the soft earth. To let the ground dry out for his heavy guns, Napoleon made the fateful choice to delay the opening assault by several hours. Those delayed hours cost him the empire. Historian Alessandro Barbero emphasizes how tightly the timeline operated against the French. The delay bought Blucher's marching Prussians the one thing they desperately needed: time. When the fighting finally erupted around midday, it was exceptionally brutal. French waves battered the ridge, but the British infantry squares held fast against furious cavalry charges. At the farmhouse of Hougoumont, a small garrison of Allied troops held out all day against thousands of French attackers, tying down critical reserves that Napoleon desperately needed elsewhere. Meanwhile, Napoleon had sent Marshal Grouchy with a large force to pursue and block the Prussians. Hearing the distant thunder of cannons from Waterloo, Grouchy faced a historic dilemma: march toward the gunfire or strictly obey his original written orders. He chose to follow his orders, allowing the Prussians to slip away and reach the main battlefield. By late afternoon, Prussian columns slammed into Napoleon's exposed right flank. Forced to fight a two-front battle, Napoleon deployed his ultimate reserve, the legendary Imperial Guard. They were the elite veterans who had never known defeat, but under a hail of British musketry, even